Hey guys, it's Angel, and we are back with one of the two aircraft I've been anticipating most, and one that's one of two coming out very soon. This is Carenado's PA28R Arrow III. Of course, we're also expecting the Justflight very soon, and I will be doing comparisons, but this is the first of our double aircraft releases we've got, so interesting time for the sim. Now, the PA28 Cherokee family, of course, 2 to 4 seat trainer, air taxi, personal use aircraft, used very widely across the world. This is the retractable gear Arrow III. Of course, Arrow 3 has the downward normal tailplane, I should say, compared to the Arrow 4 with a T-tail. I'll explain that in a moment. But let's just set our parking brake, and of course we have our usual features here from Carenado of all our lovely little features on the aircraft. So when we go outside, we have the prerequisite tow bars, chocks, pitot covers, cones, doors open, a ground power unit there. All the lovely little features, of course, usual lovely liveries that come with Carenado aircraft, and your own tail number does print on the aircraft, of course. That is my 403 Sierra X-ray, which is nice. The other ones haven't always done that, so that is a nice little touch, Carenado, thank you. So, of course, inside we can turn all these things off, and I will make sure this time when I actually test this to check the doors are closed before I depart. I did this with a Seneca once. It was a bit stupid. Okay, so let's get rid of the yoke. Now, I did quite a bit of my time in the Piper family. And set our fuel tank there. Make sure our fuel is set to on. Let's crack the throttle. Parking brakes are set to on. So, battery to on. Beacon on for, of course, engine start. And let's get this thing moving. Crank her over. Set back to both. Let's get nav on. Alternator and avionics bus is on. Okay. So we have, of course, got our autopilot set up here. 2 Garmin units, controls. This is a more modern interior panel. The Justflight one is a slightly older panel appearance, of course. So we have got a difference there. Parking brake is just located there. Now, this more modern panel I do quite like as well, but I also love the retro panel in Pipers. Unlike the Cessnas, of course, you have that quadrant style throttle section here, unlike the plunger style for Cessnas, of course. Now, do the doors work from the inside is the question. We have a click spot, and they do. Wonderful. Of course, one of the things with Carenados compared to the default Asobo aircraft is you have got your usual accoutrement of click spots and adjustable things to do. They don't do a huge amount. Some of them do, like lighting controls, but in general, they are simply fun little things to press. You know, to role-play your flight out, which is part of the experience in Flight Sim, and something I really missed with Asobo, even being able to open doors, which is... And the engine tone does change when we open windows and doors. That's nice. Now, because you can see here from the wing, we have got the stepped profile wing found on later Pipers, compared to the old Hershey bar. There's some debate amongst pilots as to whether it works, but the design principle was that, of course, they have slightly wider wingspan, about 2 feet, and this stepped chord, or the same chord throughout the whole wing, the stepped profile improves its stall capabilities. And low-wing single-engine G aircraft have some pretty crappy records when it comes to stalling low and slow, especially in hot conditions. Slightly wider, it pushes out the stall point further on the wing from the root, which of course can improve characteristics. Anyway, less talking, more flying. Let's get this thing moving, shall we? Parking brake is disengaged. Let's run her out to the runway. And I've still got my sun shields down. Let's get rid of those. Okay, so ground taxiing is very nice and easy. And performance on the aircraft of the sim is, I'd say, good. It's normal for what I'd expect of an aircraft of this type. Let's get ourselves down to the end of the taxiway there. We'll give ourselves a notch of flaps for departure. Let's take a look at the engine sounds on the outside when we hold short here. Not going to bother doing a run-up check because it's a sim aircraft with no failure set, so I'm going to get the same mag values. This isn't an A2A aircraft. Let's crank her up, shall we? That sounds nice. Not bad. Let's get ourselves onto the runway here. Nothing on approach, so if there was a habit there. Let's get ourselves turning here. We'll just rolling start this. It sounds a little springy. I've never noticed Pipers be this boingy. The spring sounds a little dramatic. Okay, we're on the center line. We're departing now. Okay, passing through 60 knots, and we'll just begin to ease the nose up. And it kind of pulls itself off the runway quite readily, which is a bit unusual. I was expecting a more progressive nose up response. Not quite as jerky. Gear coming up. Flaps coming up. Let's put some trim in this for climb. Pull back the power slightly. Interesting, I don't really notice much change in the pitch of the engine, or the tone. Okay. There we go. Coming up nicely now. So, of course, you're expecting probably in the ballpark of 130 to 140 knots cruise from an aircraft like this. That would be typical for a Piper single-engine complex. It's kind of the ballpark for the 200 horsepower retractable gear aircraft you'll tend to see. Alright, let's get ourselves turning here for our circuit. Texturing, as always, is wonderful from Carenado. That's one thing they definitely don't skimp on. Even the flat panel looks nice here. Now, it's not everyone's taste. Of course, we have got the Justflight coming, which will be a difference there. There's some little nicks and scratches on it, of course, to give it some difference and some appearance, which is nice. Let's get ourselves turning here. Keeping this aircraft coming round. There we are. I've always been a big fan of Piper's aircraft. The visibility is fantastic, and in sim purposes, they've always been just a fun aircraft to potter around in. Whether it's been A2A's Cherokee, whether it's been the old Carenado Pipers they had, even the old Carenado Saratoga, which I loved. There were just something wonderful about them. Pipers are uncomplicated. They are a simple joy. They're a family car. It's basic aviation in a very pretty package. And it's something different to the usual Cessna fodder that's offered everywhere. And interestingly enough, I'm pulling back on the throttle here and I'm not noticing much change in tone. Let's go back to flight idle. Okay, so I'm getting the gear warning. And it's not a huge level of difference. It sounds muffled, like you're wearing a headset, which is normal for inside an aircraft, of course, but it sounds like I'm wearing a headset. Everything does is muffled and muted. Carenado's track record with sounds hasn't been wonderful. So this is kind of one of those trends of like, really guys, with Justflight 1 coming out very imminently, and it's been the first real time we're expected to compete, because this was announced after. I will say this, the Carenado one was announced after the Justflight one was announced, so they knew it was coming. And you'd think they'd take that time to get it perfect rather than rush to beat them. Now, there is going to be a small market share taken by this, and that's probably why they put it out quickly. So, that's one issue I definitely noticed. The sound could be better. Okay, so let's start descending here. And we'll start turning for our approach. Nice and easy. Doesn't really want to lose power or lose speed here because I'm pulled back to what it considers flight idle. I'm getting my gear warning there. So I'm just going to idle this out. Shut up, gear warning. Where is my warning? Can I not turn you off? Shut up! Never flown the retractable in real life, so I don't know where the damn button is to shut it up. Quiet! You heathen thought. Behave yourself. I'm having to go to a third of throttle here for this. You know what? Sod it. Gear down. Yeah, I have to be at a third of throttle for the gear warning horn to come off, and at that point it will not descend great. So that's, yeah. Now, yeah, I should be dropping my gear by base turn here on a GA plane, but I've had to go a lot longer than I'd like to, and this is not feeling very Piper-y. It doesn't feel like it wants to slow down a lot, which is a criticism, maybe? And now I'm definitely losing speed with the gear down. Almost feels like I've got epic drag as soon as I put the gear out, like RuPaul levels. But with the gear out up, it's super, super slick. And with that third of a throttle set to the gear warning horn, that kind of annoys me. So making descents within the pattern or towards an area is going to be really hard unless you put the gear down. Or can put up with annoying meh, 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 for a whole third of your throttle, which is definitely higher than a flight idle should be. Let's put a notch of flaps in, and we're going to overshoot the center line here, so we need to rotate it back around. Let's give it a bit more rudder. Very aware of the fact I'm low speed right now. And low altitude. We'll just let it drift back on to runway heading here. Pull back the throttle a little bit. Allow ourselves to sink down, passing through 1,000. We'll just overturn it here. And then allow ourselves to drift back onto our heading whilst maintaining descent. Keep it about 500 feet a minute. It should be plenty. Let's just drift this back on course now. Second stage of flaps there. Throttle to idle. This is something that's been throwing me off with flying jets recently, has been that I've been wanting to go to idle when I'm on approach at various phases, and jets don't respond well to idle throttle. At least not military jets. They tend to kind of fall out of the sky at that point. Give it a little bit of a notch of power here. Nicely lined up for a good approach. Let's maintain that about 500 feet a minute. At the moment, we'll flare that out as we approach. Threshold in sight. The aircraft is incredibly well behaved right now. Characteristics on approach are very gentle, very Piper-like. My only issue, of course, was the gear. Now, let's let this thing sink down here towards threshold. Drop about 600-700 at the moment, just trying to lose some altitude. Okay, let's pull the nose up and let it sink. A little bit off center line, but it's okay. We are floating quite a way down the runway because I'm trying to be gentle with this. There we go. Touchdown. Let's correct our positioning there. So we're still on the center line now, which means we kind of look like we did it on purpose. Okay, and that brings us to a nice gentle stop in a reasonable time. We'll just taxi it clear of the active runway there. And down. So lands in a relatively short manner. I was being a little gentle on where I was trying to basically approach from and my speeds and angles, because I'm not too familiar with how Carenado set the flight model up, but it's very forgiving. It gave me a lot of wiggle room in terms of being able to adapt my approach and change how my angle was coming in. When I decided to go from I'm floating to I want to put this down now before we go too much further, the aircraft responded and it did settle down, and it put itself down in an incredibly placid manner. So it's responsive, but it's also very forgiving in terms of what it will allow you to do. I quite like this. Now, I'm going to have to preface this on, or caveat this, I should say, on, I will see when the Justflight one comes out. But, for now, part one of our Arrow 3, or Arrow off, is that the Carenado has got some sound weirdness, and it definitely has some issues in terms of being way too slippery and having the, I'd say the gear warning horn is way too high. I will need to go look up some numbers to compare, but a whole third of the throttle, needing a third of the throttle in with the gear up, it feels significant. Could be accurate, could be not accurate, but I will need to go find some numbers. The aircraft doesn't like to descend though, without the gear down, so that's an interesting factor. But overall, it's our first PA28 in FS 2020. There's another one just over the crest, and we still haven't got one with fixed gear, which I thought we'd see first. So maybe Carenado having now the body of the PA28, we may see the Archers or the newer Warriors coming from them, which would be really nice because I love the Archer. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this review of the Carenado PA28R Arrow III, or as they call it, just the F28R or R28 Arrow III, because naming rights. Maybe yes, maybe no. If you like the more modern styling, yes. There'll probably be patches for the sound. Maybe some tweaks to its performance, because Carenado like to push things out, then patch it. But I'd say wait for the... If you can wait for the Justflight and find out. Guaranteed that will be more expensive. This was £20 on the marketplace. Guarantee the Justflight will probably be 30 or 40. So, watch this space. I'll review that one too. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.